I think the future of TV advertising is very strong. I mean, we've had linear TV forever, we've had set-top box TV forever, but now TV is changing format, but it's certainly not going away. TV advertising is still a great place to hit the biggest reach you can get in the market, and we're seeing the biggest growth in advertising right now is being pushed to e-commerce companies. So people who are trying to get you to respond to their advert by going online and engaging with the brand. And that is actually a huge uplift in all the countries that we certainly work with. Is very, very highly focused on e-commerce and app downloads as well. So continuing the message from TV, online and to other platforms as well. I think linear is going to have a slow decline over a long period of time. It's not going away anywhere quickly. People still want to consume TV in a fairly passive manner. For the most part, of course, you've got big events, which are going to drive people to viewing a particular program. But programmatic, there's certainly a lot of demand from the buy side in terms of the advertiser. From a sales side perspective, I think that's going to be a bit slower. We're going to see it coming on board. There's a lot of people who are doing interesting stuff in this space. Targeting actively is of course essential, but not just in terms of hitting a particular demographic. And TV historically has been quite broad brush in the demographic you can attach or hit. Now it's getting much more fine in terms of targeting, but it's more than demographic. It's making sure you're hitting people at the right time of day, in the right frame of mind, with the right creative. And again, programmatic can go some way to that, but it's really about pulling in that return path as well from an advertiser's perspective, understanding not just somebody saw the advert, but then what do they do afterwards? And that's certainly what we're seeing in the market. Programmatic means lots of different things. It's not necessarily real-time bidding in the same way you have in digital. Programmatic can be a more systematic way of buying TV. We certainly see in markets such as the US and in Asia, buying TV can actually be quite an elaborate and laborious process with long lead times. Programmatic is going to address that and make that easier, but we're not necessarily looking at real-time bidding for TV in the same as we'll have for digital banner advertising. You have auction markets, you'll have private markets, there's lots of different ways it can be purchased. But the scope is huge, but it's certainly not something that's going to happen overnight. We look at programmatic targeting by demographic. I mean, it's quite often you'll pull that data back to look at how what kind of demographic you have in a particular zone or geographic area, and then restricting the targeting going out to them. As we move towards proper household level targeting, that will change. And the journey is long. And actually, we're going to have a hybrid approach for some time. So you may have a campaign which is partially made up from a broad brush national linear campaign, and then also adding in your targeting on top of that.
What's TV Square's piece in this industry, and what do you have coming up in 2016?
Well, we're pretty unique in the market. We're essentially a platform that lets people identify exactly where they should be buying TV, market, region, network, creative, and all these things in combination as well. A very granular and very rapid basis. So we can tell you after being on air for 1 day or 2 days of a campaign, exactly not just how the campaign is performing, but also exactly how you can tweak that campaign for the next purchase. So at the moment we have a platform that runs in 45 different countries. We're having huge traction amongst the brand advertisers, but where we see it going in the future is moving from looking at a historical view of campaign performance to a predictive capability to say, here are your top 5 opportunities to improve your buy over the next week or month. And if you do this, this, and this, you will see an uplift in sales or an uplift in lifetime value or increased market share, and then you can reinvest that money. And essentially, the clients who use TV Squared very well are actively engaged. They're using the platform on a daily or at least weekly basis to understand the inventory that drives in value and the inventory that perhaps isn't driving so much value. And once they understand that, they have the confidence to pour more money in the top of the funnel. So we see many advertisers who start off with very small budgets for TV, who then end up spending tens to hundreds of millions of dollars on TV because they have the accountability on TV now the same way they're used to having in digital.
And what's the biggest opportunity for the year ahead, 2016? What's going to happen that didn't happen in 2015?
For TV in general? It's going to be a diversification across different platforms. It's going to be having a message that can be mixed up between digital, between video on demand, between linear TV, and being able to join those points together. I mean, the consumer journey is multifarious. It's a matrix. It's not just a funnel anymore. Getting somebody to the start part of the journey is a matrix of journeys, a matrix of touch points. But actually, once you've got their interest, that the story isn't finished. They're going to maybe visit your website, they're going to leave, they're going to see an advert on social, they're going to see an advert offline. You've got to tie that together as well and eventually get them to become a purchaser, and then potentially, depending on your brand as well, having them repeat purchase as well and identify that lifetime value. So TV is growing. overall. Linear is probably decreasing among certain parts of the population, but it's certainly not going away anytime soon. It's still a $180 billion market globally, and we're just going to see the file format, the format of the TV changing.
How would you compare the position of TV and consumption of TV in a market like the UK and Europe versus the US? You know, we hear a lot about cord cutting in the US. Yep. Is that real in Europe?
I think it's less pronounced. I mean, there's a lot of monopoly action in the US. Consumer behavior is quite different. The advertising is very different. The marketing messaging is has a very different feel to it. And it's completely prevalent in the US. I mean, TV is still massively dominant. And there's a lot of traditional companies out there who are still very effectively marketing with old-fashioned linear TV. There's still a lot of direct mail companies, there's a lot of direct messaging companies out there. But it's changing. I think the interesting thing about the US is a real curve in maturity of brand organizations, from the extremely analytical to people who are really just doing it the same way they've always done it before. Cord cutting almost certainly will happen, but it's just changing in the market. It's more flexibility. It doesn't mean that people are never going to watch packaged media anymore. It's going to fall off a cliff. I just think this is, it's a disruption in the market, and it's going to cause organizations to change the way they behave and have to target those people. I mean, disruption is good. It's good for the consumer, and it's good because it means that you're going to create more engaging content.
What happens to pricing for TV ads as TV gets lit up by these technologies like programmatic and addressability?
Well, there's obviously supply and demand like any other market, and that can be constricted in some ways. What we tend to find is that it's not always the most engaging programming that actually drives the CMO's goals. You might have your mark programs and your things you can't advertise on, Game of Thrones, for example, other large products like that are very engaging, but they don't necessarily cause somebody to respond in the moment. You might want to break off your viewing to go and watch an advert, or they engage with that advert. So I think pricing will become more democratized. We'll find there are increasing impacts of supply and demand, but the inventory in TV will start to bleed online as well. So the pricing will be volatile. We're seeing shrinking users in particular for particular kinds of TV viewership, and that will have an impact. But who can tell really? The idea is not to negotiate super hard in your CPTs, but identify exactly what you should be buying instead. So it's not just about getting everything for super cheap. It's about identifying exactly what you can get that's going to drive your own campaign goals.